Hello, it's Monday, June 26th, 2017. You are listening to Inception Radio Network, voice of the fringe majority. This is Carol Carl with UFO Headline News. Tonight, provided weather allows, from your backyard, your balcony, any place you can get a chance to look at the sky, you're going to see the moon in front of the constellation Cancer the Crab. Yep, the waxing crescent moon will beam in front of that constellation. It's the faintest constellation of the Zodiac, by the way. It seems as though in the real sky, unlike a chart, which you can find later at ufoheadlinenews.com, you're not likely going to be able to pick out any of the stars in the moon's vicinity because the constellation Cancer the Crab is faint, and it's obscured by evening twilight. But Cancer stars will be there, behind the moon's glare all the same. Zodiacal constellations like Cancer distinguish themselves from other constellations in that the sun, moon, and planets travel within their borders. The sun travels in front of the constellation Cancer from about July 21st to August 10th every year. That may seem to be at odds with the horoscope page that you might find in your newspaper, and that probably gives the sun's passage through Cancer for the dates June 21st to July 21st. Why the discrepancy? Well, that's because the zodiac sign is different from the zodiac constellation, although they are often confused. The definition of a tropical zodiac sign is this. By definition, the sun always is at the first point of the sign Cancer on the June solstice, irrespective of which group of stars backdrops the sun at that time. If you look at the globe, and you'll note the Tropic of Cancer, which marks the northernmost extent of the sun's travels on June solstice. So here's the definition of a zodiac constellation. Any constellation can be thought of as a section of the starry sky seen and wondered about for millennia by stargazers. In our time, constellations have official borders, which were agreed upon by that body called the International Astronomical Union. They started that back in the 1930s. Over 2,000 years ago, the sun actually shone in front of the constellation Cancer on the June solstice. Today, the June solstice sun shines in front of the constellation Taurus. Therefore, the first point of the sign Cancer presently resides in the constellation Taurus. Because the Earth's axis continually changes its tilt relative to the backdrop of stars, the June solstice sun swings westward through all the constellations of the zodiac, and that takes a period of about, 26,000 years. All the while, the June solstice sun always marks the first point of the sign Cancer. Kind of confusing, complex, interesting, and once again, we promise here at Inception Radio Network on the UFO Headline News, no tests, no pop quizzes, just enjoy the flow of the info. Speaking of info that flows or not, well, NASA, there are those who say NASA stands for never a straight answer. Well, they're trying, but it looks like those colorful clouds, well, not so much. Here's the headline, Look Up. NASA launch will create colorful clouds. This story gets a byline for Tariq Malik, who writes it for space.com. He's the managing editor. And here we go. Update for June 24th, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That was the last scheduled launch. NASA has once again delayed the launch of the artificial cloud mission due to unexpected cloudiness around that Wallops Flight Facility launch site. Wallops has not announced when the next launch window will open, but NASA will keep us updated. In case you missed it, this is time number 8 they're going to try. The primary goal is to test a new canister, an ampule ejection system, on a sounding rocket. Quote, the multi-canister ampule ejection system flying on this mission will allow scientists to gather information over a much larger area than previously. During a sounding rocket mission, canisters will deploy during the rocket's ascent, and they will release blue, green, and red vapor to form artificial clouds between 4 and 5.5 minutes after launch. These clouds, or vapor tracers, allow scientists on the ground to visually track particle motions in space, end quotes. The mission is highly dependent on the weather, as the test requires clear skies over ground camera sites. Those sites, Wallops Center and Duck, North Carolina. In fact, this is the 8th time NASA has tried this launch so far this month. Since June 1st, the agency has been repeatedly thwarted by high winds, cloud cover, and even boats in an offshore hazard area where parts of the sounding rocket will fall into the Atlantic Ocean. And it's noted here, if you live in the Wallops Island area and you want to watch the launch with NASA, well, they invite you to come on over to the Wallops Flight Facility. And you can also download something called What's Up at Wallops. It's an app. You can find out where and when to look to see the launch from your location. Oh, by the way, the folks over at space.com say if you capture an amazing image of this sounding rocket launch, or those colorful artificial clouds, we hope, and you want to share them, well, there's a link you can submit your photo, and they just might stick it into their photo gallery. Cool. So we'll try to stay awake and keep our eyes on the skies over Wallops Island, Virginia. And if all goes finally as planned, these colorful clouds should be seen throughout the United States East Coast as far up as the state of New York. Here's a snippet of an article, but the content is interesting. It's from sciencemag.org with a byline for Sid Perkins. Here's the headline: Bright Night, Glowing Sky Mystery Solved. Well, we know it wasn't the NASA clouds. Here we go. On rare occasions, the nighttime sky at Earth's temperate latitudes becomes bright enough, even on moonless nights, for people to read a book. These mysterious events, termed bright nights and reported for centuries, aren't related to the glows of aurora. Instead, a new study suggests the phenomena occur when 4 types of slow-moving, high-altitude atmospheric waves merge over a small region and, in turn, temporarily drive a 10-fold or stronger brightening of an ever-present glow in the upper atmosphere. That air glow rises when individual gas items, previously created when ultraviolet light blasted those gas molecules apart, later recombine. That's what the researchers explain. Analyzing measurements of high-altitude air glow gathered by a satellite in 1992 and 1996, those were the years of maximum and minimum solar flare activity, respectively, the scientists found 11 cases where air glow, in theory, brightened enough to be seen by observers on the ground. This is reported in Geophysical Research Letters. Based on the team's analyses, they estimate that a 10-fold or more magnification of air glow occurs somewhere on Earth on 7% of nights, with observers at any one spot able to see a bright night only once per year, and only then if conditions are just right. Reports of bright nights have become more rare in recent times. It's that light pollution factor. Although the team's analyses probably won't help regular stargazers, they could be used to help predict when enhanced airglow might interfere with the sensitive instruments used by many ground-based astronomers. High-altitude airglow. Amazing. Here's something we find quite amazing. It's from TheVerge.com, written by Rich McCormick. Headline: Here comes the United States Space Corps. A proposed new branch of the United States military would protect Americans from space threats. Star Trek has Starfleet, Star Wars has the Imperial Navy, and Halo has the United Nations Space Command. But for the moment, real-life Earthlings of the United States don't have a cool sci-fi name for their space military. But that could change soon. Legislation has been drafted by the House Armed Services Committee to form the Space Corps, a new branch of the United States military that would come under the command of the Air Force and deal with threats to American national security occurring outside of Earth's atmosphere. The draft legislation was worked up by both Republican and Democrat House representatives, who said there was a, quote, bipartisan acknowledgement that the strategic advantages we derive from our national security space systems are eroding, end quotes. Those are the words of Representative Jim Cooper. He's a Tennessee Democrat, and Mike Rogers, a Republican from Alabama. In their statement, they said they were, quote, convinced that the Department of Defense is unable to take the measures necessary to address these challenges effectively and decisively, or even recognize the nature and scale of its problems, end quotes. Oh, we're reading between the lines here, gentle listeners. The Air Force currently has its own Space Command wing, but should the new legislation become law, it would require the creation of the Space Corps, quote, as a separate military service responsible for national security space programs for which the Air Force is today responsible, end quotes. The said Space Corps would no doubt carry on some of the secretive projects that the Air Force Space Command is currently undertaking in the upper reaches of our atmosphere, but they could also, theoretically, be called upon to defend Earth against extraterrestrial threats one day. It says that right here. That is, if the Space Corps idea isn't shot down before it can blast off, anyway. The Air Force is currently against the formation of a new branch, arguing that it would cause organizational confusion and delay existing projects. Here's a quote from Air Force Chief of Staff General David Goldfein. Quote, I would say that we keep that dialogue open, but right now I think it would actually move us backwards, end quotes. We shall see. Here at Inception Radio Network, UFO Headline News, we will keep you in the loop on this one. Let's loop around to some UFO history, shall we? It's an anniversary date. Well, we missed it. It was actually June 24th, 1947. That very important date when Kenneth A. Arnold, the American aviator and businessman, was just making an ordinary flight. He was flying in the area of Mount Rainier, and he watched 9 unusual objects flying in tandem. Kenneth A. Arnold was born in Sebeka, Minnesota. He grew up in Scobie, Montana. He attended the University of Iowa, swimming, etc., diving. He was good enough at the latter to actually try out for the United States Olympic diving team. He began something called the Great Western Fire Control Supply in Boise, Idaho in 1940. That was a company that sold and installed fire suppression systems. This job took him around the Pacific Northwest. He was regarded as a skilled and experienced pilot. He had over 9,000 total flying hours, almost half of which were devoted to search and rescue Mercy Flyer efforts. On June 24, 1947, while flying near Mount Rainier in Washington State, Kenneth A. Arnold claimed to have seen 9 of those unusual objects flying in the skies. Also, he had claimed to have seen UFOs on several subsequent occasions. Arnold originally described the object's shape as, quote, flat like a pie pan, end quotes, quote, shaped like a pie plate, end quotes, and half-moon-shaped, oval in front and convex in the rear, end quotes. Something like a pie plate cut in half, with a sort of a convex triangle to the rear. And then he also called it simply, quote, saucer-like, end quotes, or like a big flat disc. He also described their erratic motion as being, quote, like a fish flipping in the sun, end quotes, or a saucer skipped across the water. From these quotes, the press quickly coined the new terms flying saucer and flying disc to describe such objects, many of which were reported within days after Kenneth Arnold's original sighting. Later, Arnold would add that one of the objects actually seemed to resemble a crescent or a flying wing. The United States Air Force formally listed the Arnold case as a mirage. This is one of many explanations that have been disputed by critics, and researcher Jerome Clark, for instance, author of the UFO book he published in 1998. There's also Ronald Story's The Encyclopedia of UFOs, published in 1980. Both of these books argue that there has never been an entirely persuasive conventional explanation of this sighting. After his UFO sighting, Kenneth A. Arnold became a minor celebrity, and for about a decade thereafter, he was somewhat involved in interviewing other UFO witnesses and contactees. Notably, he investigated the claims of one Samuel Eaton Thompson, one of the first contactees. There's a Google search, gentle listeners, Samuel Eaton Thompson. Kenneth Arnold wrote a book and several magazine articles about his UFO sighting and his subsequent research. By the 1960s, however, Arnold had little to do with UFOs and eventually declined all interviews. But on the date of June 24th, 1977, that anniversary date, he attended the first International UFO Conference in Chicago. That was curated by
Lowe's has you covered for all those projects on your summer to-do list and will even help you save. Give your home a whole new look inside and out with $10 to $40 off paint, exterior stains, and resurfacers via rebate. And add a pop of color to your porch or patio with flowers. Get your choice 2 for $10 basic 1.5-gallon hanging baskets. All projects have a starting point. Start with Lowe's. Paint offer valid 6/21 through 7/5. Exclusions apply. Plan offer valid 6/28 through 7/5. Color and selection vary by location while supplies last. U.S. only.
Magazine, marking that 30th anniversary, the birth of the modern UFO age. Here is one of the comments that Kenneth Arnold made at that point. Quote, "Well, right here we've seen something. I've seen something. Hundreds of pilots have seen something in the skies. We dutifully reported these things. And we have to have 15 million witnesses before anybody's going to look into the problem? Seriously? Well, this is utterly fantastic. It's more fantastic than flying saucers or people from Venus or anything as far as I'm concerned," end quotes. And he meant, we're seeing this, but nobody's doing any kind of fact-check, investigation, etc. Kenneth Arnold and his wife Doris had 4 daughters. He ran unsuccessfully for lieutenant governor of Idaho in 1962. Kenneth A. Arnold transitioned, as we like to say, at age 68 in a hospital in Boise, Idaho. But there's even controversy about that. There is one bio in which it says he succumbed in Bellevue, Washington. And all those descriptors that Mr. Arnold used eventually morphed into what we know as flying saucers. So, since we're in that Washington, let's pick up a sighting, a recent one, from Auburn, Washington. It has a MUFON case number 84535. The date of this sighting is the 11th of June, 2017, but nobody reported it till June 22nd. Here's the summary. Chevron of lights, no structure visible, pointing toward left. There's a bit of photographic evidence for you to peruse at your leisure, gentle listeners. You can find links later at ufoheadlinenews.com. Under sighting specifics, this particular one had a viewing distance of 501 feet to 1 mile. The altitude of the object was over 500 feet, and there wasn't any cloud cover. The sighting duration, 1 minute. Object features, unknown. Object flight path, also unknown. And, as we previously heard from the summary, this object was shaped like a chevron. Maximum temperature at the time in Auburn, Washington was 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 degrees Celsius, dropping down to a minimum temperature of 52 degrees Fahrenheit, 11 degrees Celsius. Nothing outstanding about the visibility factors. They were all standard, 10 miles, 16 kilometers. And conditions weather-wise, nothing abnormal. Here's the account. While staying a couple of days at a casino in our RV, we took several photos of the sunset. I didn't notice anything unusual at the time, but upon sifting through the photos later, I came across this one. It seems to have a small chevron of lights between the clouds. The strange part, these lights were not anywhere in the photos, not visible. They were photos taken before this one and just after. My first instinct was that I had taken the photo through a window, and it was reflection, but that wasn't the case. My next thought was lens flare from the lights on the ground directly beneath this object. I'm not sure if this is the culprit, though, either. I am left just as surprised as I am intrigued. And if you're intrigued enough to find your way to the link and look at that shot, there is a place for your cogent comments underneath the sighting reports at ufostalker.com. Last week, here at UFO Headline News, we covered a sighting out of Deming, New Mexico. It was accompanied by several photographs, most curious photographs, quite clear. They showed an object, a white, lumpy object, almost looking like an inflatable, in the shots. Well, we did some sleuthing around, and we think we might have an answer to this one. It was case number 84552, MUFON-wise. In summary, the witness had noticed a hovering object. They were driving from Las Cruces to Tucson. They finally lost sight of the object because they simply had to continue on their way. Well, someone posted a comment down in that little end spot at UFOstalker.com, the space below each report. And what their contribution, well, it looks like this is the answer. They noted, this appears to be the tethered aerostat radar system as described in Wikipedia. Moored balloons are used for surveillance near the Mexican border. So, of course, we jumped on over to Wikipedia, and lo and behold, there it is, ye old tethered aerostat radar system, just so obviously what was caught in the photographs by the witness. And checking further down in the story at Wikipedia regarding the tethered aerostat radar system, we find out, operational sites, Yuma and Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and, Deming, New Mexico, the very site reported in that particular UFO sighting. So apparently we can, at least in this case, say case closed. Let's head east now to the city of Canfield in the state of Ohio. That's the setting for MUFON sighting number 84602. The date of the sighting, June 19th, 2017. It was reported June 25th of this month. In summary, June 19th, 2017, picture, silver orb in sky on Western Reserve Road. There are photos, and you can find them later by links at ufoheadlinenews.com. Lots of unknowns here in the sighting specifics, the viewing distance, altitude, object features, and flight path of the object. They're all simply listed as unknown, but our witness does report that the shape of this object was cylindrical. Here's the shape of the weather. Maximum temperature 79 degrees Fahrenheit, 26 degrees Celsius. Minimum temperature 61 degrees Fahrenheit, 16 degrees Celsius. The maximum visibility, the standard 10 miles, 16 kilometers, dropping down to a minimum of 5 miles, 8 kilometers, because it was raining. Here's the account. We were driving in our van on Western Reserve Road, coming from Boardman Road towards Canfield, Ohio. My husband was driving, and he noticed some nicely shaped clouds in the sky and asked me to take a picture. Later that week, I was sending him the pictures from my phone, and I saw that there was one silver orb thing in the picture. I had taken 3 pictures and did not see this orb while taking the pictures. I can't tell if this was a reflection or something actually in the sky. I just thought you could take a look at it and let us know. Well, we took a look at it, gentle listeners, and what it seems we're seeing is the bottom half of a disc, sort of a 3/4 angle shot. We don't see orb, we see, flying saucer. Let's just shift our trajectory a tad, continuing east, and we'll come to Red Lion, Pennsylvania. That's where MUFON case number 84532 took place. It happened on the 18th of June this year and wasn't reported till the 21st. Summary: silver transparent sphere observed, followed by chopper and airplane at same low altitude. Well, that's intriguing. The sighting specifics offered by our witness here are a viewing distance fairly low, 101 to 500 feet. The altitude was 500 feet or less. A quick sighting duration, just 12 seconds, so object features, understandably, are just listed as other. The flight path, hovering, then path, and this object was shaped like a sphere. Here's a little bit of meteorology. The maximum temperature, 89 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius. Minimum temperature, 73 degrees Fahrenheit, 23 degrees Celsius. Visibility factors, maximum, mean, and minimum, all the same, 10 miles, 16 kilometers. And at the time of this event, there's no notation of any abnormal weather conditions. Here's the sighting. I was standing in my backyard watching the field for deer when I noticed a silver, but mostly transparent sphere floating in the sky about 300 to 400 feet in the air. This object floated without sound, without light. I pulled my phone from my pocket and switched to video mode, but it would not pick up this object. It blended perfectly with the backdrop, but clear as day in the night sky, with just the human eye. This object, after 10 or 15 seconds, shot off out of sight, followed directly afterwards by both a helicopter and a non-commercial plane. They were flying at the same low altitude, flying the same course. And a second after that, a loud boom was heard. Oh, those mysterious booms. Not a crash, probably nothing flying fast enough to have made it a sonic boom. Well, we're not going to find it out today, gentle listeners. We've just noted all the clocks on the wall, all the time zones indicate we've got to boom out of here because that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Inception Radio Network. Follow today's broadcast at UFOheadlinenews.com and YouTube. Take care of each other. We're all in this together. This is Carol Carl. See you tomorrow.